there's so many amazing things that you do, creating voice and poetry, and through your activism and your collaboration, and so inspiring. So we're so honored to have you here with us. Wonderful praise for your book already from so many of your collaborators, your friends and writers, and I've asked a few people here to help me share them. So I think Danny and Dave and Chris will come up and share.
Will be quoting Darren Rikio Muko, dear friend of ours. Traci kato-kiriyama's Navigating Without Instruments guides us to the fire where we commune with the living, the dead, and the never been alive. The flames of kato-kiriyama's poetry and prose reflect enduring and complicated love for places we call community and souls we call family, chosen and by birth. Throughout Navigating Without Instruments, kato-kiriyama powerfully reminds us of our deeply shared connection through grief, joy, and our collective struggles in a way that grabs you and never lets you go. Very true, very true.
These are words from Angela Pena Redondo. Traci kato-kiriyama's Navigating Without Instruments is a cacophony of voices that celebrates personal histories, memories, and the rhythmic chords that refuse to forgetting. This brave and vulnerable collection resists monolithic narratives that oppress and flatten the femme, queer, Asian, and diasporic body and spirit. These poems are electric, striving to combat psychological annihilation of any kind. Hence, this collection continues that lineage of poet, artist, activist, and fortifies it, ready to pass the fire to the next.
From Yumi Sakazawa, author of Your Illustrated Guide to Becoming One with the Universe. Traci kato-kiriyama's Navigating Without Instruments will expand your heart and spirit in all directions. In the marrow of your bones, deep into the earth, out into the streets, and into the stars and beyond, where our collective radical imagination and our ancestors of past, present, and future beckon us to listen more, ask more questions, stoke our hunger for justice, and love in ways that crack us open beyond what we believe is possible.
And I felt like we needed to complete this by inviting your key collaborator, Sean Mirdas, into this space. I stopped breathing multiple times as I read Navigating Without Instruments. There is little time to rest as kato-kiriyama flies up highways, across neighborhoods, to the afterlife and to the before. This book provides a compass for anyone looking to find direction in a world of outdated directions, comfort for anyone at a loss, and beautiful questions that reveal a landscape only kato-kiriyama has traversed, a landscape they welcome us into as a home.
Thank you so much. Whew, that was such a beautiful way to begin. Marie, thank you so much for that. Jill, I wasn't expecting that. That was awesome. I haven't heard those words read out loud, so that's really cool. And thank you for everyone who was able to make it out here physically. Thank you so much to all of you zooming in and this really odd, amazing piece of technology in front of me. I'll take a picture of it and I'll put it up later so you can see what I'm seeing. It's called, what is this, the Facebook portal? Right, so if I move, it's gonna follow me. Isn't that crazy? You can see the bathroom, yeah. And you have to see this beautiful space, so I have to do this. This is really an amazing thing. Okay, so I really appreciate this. This is, I think, only my second reading in person with the book, so I'm quite overwhelmed. I'll let you know right now. I always say this: tears are going to flow. That's for certain. But you will not hear me apologize. I have a rule, please never say sorry when tears are flowing. You know, I just think that they're bits of truth that are surfacing out of necessity. And so they're gifts of emotion, right? So you don't need to worry about me. Those of you who worry, like, is she okay? Like, it's okay. So I have this book. All right. It's called Navigating Without Instruments. It was published by Redress Press and the Accomplices. And I wanted to just give you a sense of what this book is. And forgive me, all of you out there, I'm not going to spend too much time just looking into this camera because we have all these wonderful people here too. So, you know, this was a labor of a lot of love and strife, and it was a long process. I worked on it for 8 years, and there was a lot of time spent running away from it and coming back to it. I could say that it was life and gigs and jobs and things, which it was, but really, truly, the hardest part, I think, were the psychological blocks that I had to deal with and that I had to kind of contend with. And so, but I got through it finally, and it came out in December. And so it ended up being a collection of poetry. It is a book of what I consider poetry, micro essays and notes to self, notes to community, notes to the world. And it's broken up in different chapters by these icons that you'll see in the book. And these come from survival guides from the Army and Air Forces in the 1940s and 50s. So these are signaling panels to show what situation you are if and when you are stranded, and what situation you are in with your airplane. If your plane is still flyable, if it's not flyable, if you need oil, if you need food, if you need warm clothing. And so I was kind of captivated by these as a way to enter into certain sections, certain areas, certain themes and stories and memories. I'm going to start with the very, very first thing, which is just a warning. And it's just, it travels down the whole page. Warning, a book of poetry is a trigger warning. 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 A book of poetry is a trigger. And I'm going to start at kind of the top, at just the first section. Sound check out there, can you hear me? Everybody good? And in the room, yes? Okay. Remember? Hey. Good old train. Okay. That's a trip. Oh, wow. Okay. Remember all the children who were never born to me. The little raspy voiced one who can name all the presidents. The big-haired one with a smile that screams for revolution and popsicles. The squeaky retort and gentlefoot one I saw while sitting there at the beach. Every little one I see while sitting anywhere at every awful beach. Versions of a future, a given back in my 20s. All the while I said my window was closing, but I still knew I had time. This was supposed to happen, after all or any of them, especially the ones who came to me in my dreams. The curly-haired cutie pie, who rounded the corner, off the hallway, to up and fly into my arms. I still catch him sometimes while standing here, frozen in my kitchen. Or the goofball, who tapped me on the forehead too early in the morning, begging for waffles and presents. I still see them, even after the decorations are taken down. They construct the perfect, imperfect child. Some tiny one, I imagined, would be both of my body and dropped off at my door at their age of 2, ready to go, ready to walk, ready to use the toilet on their own, my fantasies don't need to struggle. The little one who would frustrate me, send me to fits, challenge me to the point of knowing I was getting mine. The growing one who would be aging alongside me, feels like they should be, would have been, here by now. Redream, curly-haired cutie pie. He was a little he, big curly hair, mixed blood of my blood or not, maybe 4 or 5, when he sped down the hall around the corner of the kitchen, open arms toward me, running jump to fly into a future memory passed right by me. That is all I know. Or is it all I can remember? But he was mine, as much as any little one could be. Maybe there was more to recall. He had a big laugh like mine, and a grand smile. As he grew older and older, he became queerer and queerer, bigger and tougher, and he determined to keep his smile. And we never warred, and we always debated, and we spent less time together, and we loved each other like I could never love any other. Or is that just what is said happens when a child enters into your life to blossom your adulthood? Of course, of course. And one day, he went to a grave and placed a single cymbidium on a patch of land no one else was left to care to visit. He planted a joke into the earth underneath his knees and swore to the birch tree above his head that the grounds of the cemetery shook because of the chattering set of teeth buried below. That is my mother, cracking up. He said, I swear I can hear her laugh penetrate the wind. Then he rose to his feet and left me alone again. Note to self. DNA studies purport that memory is passed on through offspring. Quantum physics theorists, sociologists, and psychologists consider consciousness and its relation to intergenerational existence. We are co-creating pan-generational consciousness through the past, present, and future in concert with each other. Can any of this be passed on outside of the vessel of DNA? Will my consciousness contribute to the greater collective beyond my time here if I don't express it? Note to self, note to world. One conclusion. While occupying space on this plane, on this planet, people specifically without children need to write out and share their contributions to the greater physical world beyond the vibrations of our daily existence if we are to be a positive factor in the evolution of our collective epigenetics. One's consciousness can impact and thus seep into another's bones. If nothing else, this must be some type of permission to write down, write out, create and communicate our dreams, visions, philosophies, and practices in life. We are, after all, here, birthing. Note to community. Please do not assume so much of the person walking this earth at this time without child, that there has been a simple path of deciding against adopting or bearing child. Even when you meet them, at the moment of being at peace with not adopting or bearing child, that there hasn't been loss, contemplation, depletion, letting go, debate, fighting with self or partner, that there has only been loss, depletion, fighting with self or partner, that there hasn't been the extreme depths of unbelievable love, joy, passion, peace, exploration, creation, that there hasn't been birthing. Instead, invite us in. We can be revolutionary aunties and radical siblings, and you could probably use the support. Note to reader. Write a letter to your future great-great-grandchild, whether real or imaginary, whether you ever wanted a child or not. The letter must include 3 questions to yourself, then to the child. Mail it to someone you trust, or read it aloud once, then bury it. Woo! Take a breath. Oh my God. Thank you. Okay. So there are a lot of different threads, a lot of different narrative anchoring points that I think I'm still discovering now that the book is kind of in one place. I think all of 2020 was really spent putting the book in some kind of order, figuring out what to keep, what to leave out, what's not for now, and what's not for it ever. And so, there's, lots of threads I think that take me and maybe this book through things like death moments, that I call them death moments, and, relationships, friendships and solidarity. And I've realized in the past several years how much my grandfather is kind of an anchoring point for a lot of my drive, pain, memories that I wished for. And so I wanted to go to a section that's probably the longest section of the book, and it's called Serial Memory for Grandpa. I'm just going to read the very first part and say a little bit more. Number 7, eminent domain in the 50s. Crenshaw exit off the 405 in North Torrance. 1, next door to the coffee bean where I write. 2, down the street from Ma's old high school. 3, the exact point where the government told Grandpa he would be removed from his life at their whim. He understood eminent domain would be explained by muscle memory, like concentration, exclusion, war. All he could muster was the word, again. Concrete pillars came to plow through his blood that fed their land and quell the guts from the shigin he used to sing. Everything else locked between a bottle of sake and the soil in his palm, where stone turns to ash. Note to self, when we make pilgrimage to Manzanar every April, the weeds return to their previous formation. Blood, song, slivers of bone. My grandpa was put into Manzanar. That's where my mom was put, obviously as a child. My Auntie Aika was born there. The Kiriyama side, my dad's side, they were also taken to Manzanar. And then because my dad's dad signed no on the loyalty questionnaire, the whole family was then sent to Tule Lake. My grandfather, my grandpa Kato, he died in 1978. So he died well before, any semblance or understanding of redress. And I think there's something in there that when I talked about like sort of my drive, my fire underneath, like what I do and why, I think it's somewhere in there. So I wanted to read this piece. It's called No Redress. Dedicated to all the ancestors who died before knowing that redress and reparations would be a thing to come, or to be fought for in the future we call now. No redress, no museum, no monument, no poem, no song can house the spirit of a past soul like that of my grandfather, who died before justice could meet the old man at his mailbox. Grandpa never got to stand in line at the bank, 3 inches taller, with Redress check in hand, 1 foot in front of the other, feeling grounded again. Never got to deposit an apology in his savings account. Never got to wonder of how he might spend this money on new equipment for the nursery, or a truck for himself, or college money for his grandchildren, or for once, take the most takai cuts from the fish truck man. Most years in April, I attend pilgrimage. I say hello, Manzanar. I bow at the graves. I speak to the wind of my hopes for afterlife to be a real thing. Not so I can see Grandpa again, but for him to look around today, jump into the circle, dance the tankobushi and watch me get it right, and see our friends, all our relations, learn what we mean by chosen family. We are here, not only to remember, but to remind the local docents this place will never be a museum. This body will never forget. And we leave pilgrimage with pledges as concrete as the monument. We sing songs to keep each other awake on the long ride home. We lose sight quickly. Rearview mirrors, a pitch black sky, where they close the gate at the hour they have had enough of us, where we leave behind parts of our best poetry, where I hope not, but think Grandpa sits still, waiting. So, I think that, that's probably on a personal level, like, what drives me to work with folks, on finding justice and fighting for justice, and really more than that, fighting for healing. And that might not ever totally come. I do think that like our existence here is always going to be bittersweet. So it's moments like this and being able to like build with folks. Even over the past couple of years to do that building online, and then to have the joy of like being able to like embrace in person, it's a gift. It's such a gift. And so this is an overwhelming day for me because y'all are like sitting there listening. It's so bizarre and great, but thank you. Oh boy. So I'm going to jump all the way towards the end of the book. We're going to go to page 220 for those of you reading along. Open up your books to 220. Sometimes I think the most powerful memories maybe are the ones that we're sure, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Yes. Are the ones that we're sure we would have had people just lived longer. So, this one I'll tell a little story. I don't know if my girlfriend is watching. No, she can't be. No, she's dealing with our niece Bobby's birthday party right now. They're at Tanaka Farms in Irvine. So my dad passed in 2005. J-Sei and I got together in 2018, 10 years later. I wish I could have introduced them. It's funny though, so Joyce oftentimes when she sees me working and writing, she's always she's like, you better be writing a poem about me. You writing a poem about me? And I was like, okay, in this book there's gotta be something. There's gotta be something. And I had to, one of my rules is just to be as honest as I can be in any given moment, and whatever comes out of that is what's supposed to come. So so this is for both my dad and Joyce. Where we would have gone, And then there were those who said, it was best I didn't come out to you before you died. Your generation, being the rusty, sunken treasure chest that it is, or so they say. But I insist on my ability to predict the past. It would have happened in July. Your dying wish that final year you knew wasn't yours. A trip with all the grandkids, aunties, uncles, cousins, calabash and white blood. All aboard the biggest ship for the cheapest price. A floating island of humans, midsummer, the worst combination for sanity. I would have waived my right to a vote, packed my trepidations, and prepared an entirely new way of breathing. All eyes would be on the space between you and my girlfriend. But despite all assumptions, you would be just fine. Because the summer before, sitting down for lunch that should have been hamburgers or tacos or anything you wanted, me, hunched underneath another failed relationship, the warning of others I'd made the wrong choice again. There I was trying to defend, promise I will be fine, I promise I know what I'm doing. All you knew was to leap from your chair, forget the pock-marked liver tethering you to your seat, put your hand on my shoulder, make everyone else turn to vapor, say one thing to me, you okay, kid? I just want you to be okay. And it would happen on the deck of a ship at the end of 2 behemoth weeks. Enough time for you to witness J-Sei being to you the way she is with the rest of the world. I would pretend never to catch you catching this, and come the sunset of our trip, after wave upon wave of sticky toddlers, sopping, wet, miniature cargo shorts, stomping alongside sloppy, drunk men children, expertise gained of every open bar available before 3 p.m. and the mastering of overwhelm by every buffet. The better part of me slumped in my designated chaise lounge, barely the gumption to lift my neck in time to see you, standing at the edge of the deck, pressing your midsection against the rail, pretending you didn't need painkillers. J-Sei would walk over and ask, "How you doing, George?" You would put your hand on her shoulder. "I'm okay, kid. I'm doing okay." And there would never be a better thing said. Never a better time had. Boy, thank you. Sorry, writer Paula. Okay, just a few more. We doing okay? Okay. So one of the things, I find myself in conversations a lot with artists. I'm part of a project called Tuesday Night Project down in Little Tokyo, and we've been putting on a thing called the Tuesday Night Cafe since February of 1999. During the pandemic, we paused on doing virtual TNCs, and we did virtual programs that were more intimate, tea and letter writing sessions, workshops. But we're going to come back in May through kind of a hybrid version. And through that time, and then just think through, my life doing this kind of work. Let's see what page we're on. We're going to page 135. And I just feel like I have, so many conversations with folks, and I have a whole section then on, art and creative process. And I just want to have more conversations about it, So I just start here. Note to community. Are you an artist, a writer, an art maker, a creative? Do you birth scripts, novels, poetry, memoir, short stories, essays, letters, articles, applications, emails, captions or comments or posts on any social media platform, text messages, writer or not as one of your identifiers? We all walk through life with stories, history, experience, memories, ideas, opinions, theories, philosophies, visions, fears, fantasies, dreams, and will likely travel through life holding most of these in. At some point, someone thought it was a good idea to make record of their story or a community's narrative. And then some of that made it into the books you love. And then some of that became the basis for our various canons of literature. And some of that was drawn or animated or graphic novelized. And some of that was made into videos, narrative films, documentaries. And some of that was made into music. And some of that became the thread of information we build upon in studies of race, queerness, gender, feminism, war, history, science, technology. And at every turn, someone at some point had some kind of permission that became the opportunity for them to write. Whether that opportunity was an offer to read their writing aloud or published in a community newspaper, or a voice begging from within to be processed on paper in order to extract some deep pain or express some kaleidoscopic vision, they all heeded permission and need. No one will come to write your story for you or thread together the legacy of narratives with which you enter each room. And it doesn't matter whether you call yourself a writer or an artist. What matters lies within the doing. It is in the permission to start. So please, by all means, begin. Or continue. Right? I should write that. Continue. I do have this last note here. And no, not every artist gets up at 5 a.m. to start penning. And not every artist writes every damn day. You will find your own way, just dive. Yeah. Right? Yeah, because there's that trope. Oh, you have to write every day. You know, it's like, you know, the reality for so many, like, artists, activists, there's a lot of responsibility and commitment, right? And people who are parents, people who are working, you know, like, there's so many ways to get it done. All right, ready for one more? Okay, so Marie, I'm so glad that you suggested I read this. I've never read it out loud, but it feels right to end here today. Page number? Oh yeah, page number. Thank you so much. I love it. Page 238. All right, very good. Grandpa was like radical. That's what it's called, okay? Grandpa was like radical. Me, middle school aged, staring at a photograph of my grandfather, a panorama of the farmers at Manzanar, staring till my feet started to tingle from planting myself like a rude patron in the middle of that museum in Independence, trying to figure it out. He had a long black beard, like no one else in that photograph. Like no other photos I'd seen of him before or after the war. Fast forward several years, and 20 years after his death. Annual New Year's lunch, and Uncle Tommy, always with the best stories about Grandpa. Grandpa as usher across the border, sneaking in friends from Casada into California. Grandpa and his brother, fighting, drinking, fighting, Kagoshima always in their blood and at the tops of their lungs. But what about that beard? Simple, Tommy said. Protest. Your grandpa said he didn't need to be pretty in camp. Said he'd keep his beard as long as they were keeping him. Those words rooted in me like the hands of a cosmic god reaching into a dormant patch of history, had pulled me up, flung me loose, struck me like the world's largest choir breaking into song alongside a 1,500-foot organ and a 75-piece taiko orchestra. Like I knew it all along. Fire in the blood is genetic. Like I never need to hear another story on Grandpa, ever again. Yeah. Thank you. I am so pleased and honored again to be here. So thank you so much, J-Sei and Omusubi. And I am so excited and so honored that Marie, you would be in conversation with me. So, I agree.
To bring my mugs from Gardena. Because why? Because we're both from Gardena. Here we go. From Gardena Bowl. Yeah. Cheers. Cheers. And look what else is going on here. Look.
Yeah.
Look. Okay, we didn't plan this. We both got some purple up in here. I'm the elder in case that's not clear. So talk about location. So to me, I've been in the Bay Area for 30 years, right? And you're still there, in the hood, So I want the world to kind of know just how special the whole South Bay area is. There's the context of your writings. It comes from life, generations of living in Gardena and Torrance. Like, what's so special about it, So if you could maybe speak a little briefly about, like, what is our hometown like?
Wow.
Yeah, I know. We could cover so many things. I mean, we could just talk about the owner of Gardena Bowl, who owns also Azuma, who does shodo classes at JCI. I mean,
Wow. Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's like there's so much, so many dots we can connect literally on the map. And each dot has a freaking amazing story.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah. No, I'm glad I'm back in the South Bay. I grew up in Torrance, sort of like southeast Torrance, and went to Torrance High School. And then I was in different places of LA, Chinatown, Pasadena, Eagle Rock. And then just before my dad got sick, actually, they asked me to come to Gardena to take on a house that they had, but they weren't ready to sell it. And they didn't want to rent it to strangers. They wanted to rent it to me. And and then I made that move and my dad I don't think he knew it, but within months after I moved down, he got sick. And he had me promise him that I would stay in Gardena through my mom's life. And that's my promise. And so I'm staying there. And I'm glad obviously for the gift of being in a home with a backyard, and you know what I mean? And even more so to be close to my mom, like physically close, and I can do her grocery shopping, right? And as much as sometimes I'm like, where's my brother?
You're not the only one. Hello, you're not the only one.
I think it's a gift. It's a true gift to be able to do that, And so I'm really glad for that, because it's helped me to, I think, reestablish and have a different relationship with the South Bay. Growing up in Torrance, in my particular portion, one of the things I like to share is the relationship between being terrible at basketball and becoming an artist. Okay? So
I played basketball.
I'm sure that's Torrance. And you were good, right?
All right.
Of course you were good. Okay, I was so bad, I never made a basket, like the entirety of Candy League. Okay? And so bad that at the very last game of the last season, they're like, clear, so that I could shoot. And then I made me so mad. And of course I didn't make it. So I was like, I'm done, I can't do it. And I was like, so it's a thing, right? Like if you grow up, and I feel like this audience definitely understand, if you grow up JA in the South Bay and you're not good at basketball, you got to figure something out about your life. Oh! And my mom was like, phew, I don't want my whole life to be about your basketball scrimmages and practices and tournaments. She was very happy because she was very involved in the community. And so then I would go along with them to things. I would also take like dance classes and, like start to write and do other things. I really do. I think, had I been good at basketball, I swear to God, I wouldn't be sitting here.
A blessing, a blessing. Everybody has to play basketball.
But I wished I was good. Oh gosh, I did. But yeah, so Gardena is situated north of Torrance, and then when you go west 6 miles, we have this really nice like slate of beaches. So you go from Manhattan, Hermosa, Redondo, and then Torrance, and then PV, San Pedro to Long Beach, and then you come up Carson, right, Gardena, Compton, and then you keep going further west again, Hawthorne, Lawndale. So it's a vast kind of diversity, right? It's a vast experience from one end to the other, even within each of these neighborhoods, which I guess you could say, right, about most places. But it does have, Gardena in particular has a really like rich history, steeped in strawberry fields. It was all farmland when my mom was growing up there, and you'd see one house and then you wouldn't see another house for a couple miles. So, yeah, you went to North High, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to go to North High. Did I ever tell you this?
No.
I would talk to my parents regularly when I was in the 7th grade. I was like, can we figure out like an address thing so I could go to North? Because North was where all the JAs were. We had 7 of us at Torrance High, so people called us Little Tokyo.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, no, it was so
I was
we
like,
were, North High, all the JAs.
totally.
And then they were like, no, you're not doing that. And so I played tennis eventually. We would go to North High, and then it was crazy because we'd see so many souped up cars.
Oh, yeah.
And people would like dress up to go to school, and I was like, oh, it's so different from like the surfers at Torrance High. So it was a trip to like, so it's interesting because people assume, because I live in Gardena and I grew up in Torrance, that like I grew up around like all the JAs and I was taller, and I'm like, oh, none of that.
So that's interesting because that's what I thought.
Oh.
And see, and I was like, did Tracy go to Gardena High?
No.
See, we
No.
didn't know each other.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Torrance.
I did.
Yeah, okay. Because like I was part of that scene in North Torrance where there was all the JAs, but also Gardena, because I'm 2nd generation. I think you're 3rd generation.
Third, fourth.
Yeah. So like my mom's from Japan, right? So I actually didn't get to play basketball that much because why? Because I had to go to tea ceremony and ikebana class. I'll tell you a joke. Yeah, okay, that's how my Saturdays was going.
That's cool.
Yeah, so like that's why I was like, oh, I should do tea ceremony, serve you some tea. No, I'm gonna give you some tea in this Gardena. This is like the next iteration of it, But there's so much rich history from our communities, and just right along Western there, and then where the JCI is, there's the Azuma Rest. But there's just so much rich JA history there, and so many JAs went there after the war. And in fact, my friend Martha Nakagawa, I think she knows your parents. Yeah, she bought me these mugs, by the way. But what I love about the place that we come from is that it's so rich with Japanese 1st, 2nd, 3rd generation history. And this is the place where your writings come from. So wanted to, number 1, acknowledge how special that is. And number 2, since we're talking about sort of geography and location, there's this one poem, and I'm going to just spend a quick second on that one, just because I was wondering what your sign was. And then in one of the poems, you admit. I mean, don't get me wrong. Okay, so Tracy, you're a Scorpio.
I am a Scorpio.
Okay, so it's in one of
Sunny
these.
Scorpio day of research.
Yes, Scorpio. I forget which page that's on, but
Oh,
let's see. It's like, here it is. Yeah, Los Angeles is such a Scorpio, 107. I mean, I won't, there's a little call and response in there at the end where you say, hey, what's your sign anyway, San Francisco? I was like, oh, should we respond to this? Do I need to respond to this? Because I actually live over there on that west side, Ohlone side, San Francisco. But I was like, okay, so this is helpful. This explains a little bit about who Tracy is to me. I love me some Scorpios.
What did you get from that?
Okay, so to be very Bay Area, I was like, okay, so Scorpio's a water sign, right? There's several water signs. So like Pisces, I tend to think Pisces people are like, yeah, a lot of water, has no boundaries with their feelings, and they go all over the place. Water could get into everything, like mixed dry rot in the house. Oh my God. So water knows no boundaries, right? The way the Pisces moves. But Scorpios, the way that water moves is deep, which is what this is all about. You're so deep, and I love it. I love it because it helps me to remember what it is to be human, to feel human, and to it begs us to shed those tears, and you talk about that in your book about how tears come up for air. It's the truth coming up for air, and so to let them flow, and that's what this book does, right? So here you are, your Scorpio self, and I'm going to take it back to like the map, geography, 235th Street and Western. Yeah. So here you are as a, big feeling child. So let's look to that poem. It's the one that's right after the one where you talked about. That page number is page 60. All the tears are blurring my contacts. So thank you. I'm like, hello. It's the second part of serial memory for Grandpa. And if you can you read that one? And before we start that one, let's give folks in Zululandia a little bit of background of what Obon.
You're clowns out the deal.
Obon is kind of like the day
Trying
of
to
the dead
be in
here.
your cage.
So somebody's
You
talking
want
over
to get
there.
out?
Picture.
Huh? Yeah.
Susan,
You gotta help me find my stamps. That
Wanna
postage
find your
stamp, I
stamps?
don't know what
Okay,
happened.
just put it on mute. Chotto. Usay yo. Chotto.
She's going to dance because she's going to mail my book to someone.
That's right. Thank you, Susan. We are grateful. Thank you. Teamwork makes the dream work. Thank you.
So Obon.
Yeah, so back to Obon. Yeah. So Obon is kind of like the Day of the Dead, where the Japanese come together and they celebrate. They invite back in through ceremony, foods, altars, festivities, our ancestors. So we spend a whole weekend of all these festivities where they are welcomed back in, right? So and Tracy's going to talk about Obon, and she's going to talk about the tankobushi, which is the dance, right, of one of the festivals. Yes, it's on the coal miners' dance, right? So just keep that in mind, So Tracy's 4 years old, and she is getting ready for the Obon festivals, right? So, and she's doing the tankobushi. So that's okay.
Thank you so much. So part of serial memory for Grandpa, number 4, death equals fault. I was 4 years old. Grandpa came to watch me dance the tankobushi since he couldn't make it to the weekend of the Obon in Harbor City. He brought over a big watermelon and laughed his full face wrinkled laugh, while reminding me to smile as I danced the coal miners' dance in a circle around the living room. Grandpa left not long after and stopped by Kora-san's house a block away to have a few too many drinks, like always. A couple hours later, after dinner and lots of watermelon, I plopped on the couch next to George, who was 6.5 at the time. He was the favorite grandkid. He was always amenable, always game, always enjoyed anything Grandpa put in front of his face to eat. That made no sense to me. I hated everything except mochi and plain spaghetti noodles. Then we got the call. The one Mom hopped up to catch. The one when the world slowed everything into an elastic time warp. The one with news that made Mom jump and scream in hysterics. The telephone cord stretched 3 times longer than I knew it could, while Mom tugged and released, running back and forth to and from the phone attached to the wall. It looked like she was dancing in circles. She was incomprehensible through screens from the news on the other side of the line. Someone called to say Grandpa was just a few blocks away on 235th Street, stuck in his truck, plowed through the driver's seat by a motorcyclist. Mom couldn't stop rotating through her screams. Pop died, Pop died, Pop is dead. He was drinking, he'd been drinking. I understood quickly that died meant something bad, something gone, something away. Something like the smell of smoke, steel, and noise. George turned to me and said, "You know this is your fault." I looked at him, and for once something made sense. Grandpa did come all the way here to watch me dance, and bring me a big watermelon, and remind me to smile, and now he was stuck or gone just 3 blocks away on Western and 235th. As plainly as we sat on that couch, my feet dangling well above the floor, I looked at my brother and nodded. Okay. Note to George. It's okay. You were only 6, and he was your favorite too. Note to self. Never attempt a left turn onto Western from 235th. Yeah. Woo!
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
So when I read that,
Yeah.
and so what came to me was, here you are as a 4-year-old, and your feet's dangling, you can't even touch the floor. Yeah. And you did this alone. And you're the Scorpio who feels, has a lot of feels. And then you find out your grandpa's dead. And then your brother says it's your fault. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
What was happening for you in that moment?
All I can remember is kind of just that, I think it was sort of matter of fact.
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't know. It's one of those crazy, bizarre things where you're like, did that child feel guilty? Or was it so much like, well, this is a fact, and here you go. The way I do know that it was something was I did carry it for a long time. And about 10 years after that time, my brother was talking about how he was going to be president of Students Against Drunk Drivers. And we got into talking about my grandpa's accident. And I just feel like we were in the car, so many things in the car in LA. And we were in the back seat, my parents were in the front. And I just really matter-of-factly just said, oh, I know it was my fault that grandpa died. And like, my parents were like, everyone in the car was just like, what? Like, what? And I kind of rehashed it. And I was like, you said it was my fault. And my brother was like, I did. And my mom was like, no, he was drinking. Grandpa drank a lot. And in that moment, I kind of almost similarly kind of accepted it, like, oh, okay. But I think it always stuck, right? So it's just like there's a thing maybe that we feel on the surface, and what our brains, our intellect is maybe processing and making clarity with, and then there's what's like gonna always stew in here. Yeah.
So that's why I was curious, like, being such a deep child and getting that information, like how that information of death basically has followed you, or has grown within you, or how it's informed your life about death. Because the theme of death is like threaded through your entire book.
Yeah.
I mean, we could just spend the whole time talking about that.
Yeah.
And high five to you, because Japanese folks really don't, JA folks don't talk about the hard stuff, right?
A lot of people don't want to talk about death. No matter
That's
if
true.
they're
That's
gay or
true.
not.
But I could talk to you about that all day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably gonna be here till.
I can talk about it all the time. I love to talk about death.
Yeah.
It's not morbid at all.
No, it is precious.
Yeah.
Without it, life would be meaningless, right?
So, you know, as a feeling person, you know, I was just curious, like how death has carried you, and the part about Obon, you were doing the Obon dance. It's almost like it was like a precursor. You know, I mean, I'm sure you thought about that,
Yeah.
right? Like here you are doing the dance to honor the ancestors, and just moments later,
Yeah.
your grandfather becomes one. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what was that connection? You
Yeah.
know? Yeah. So that was definitely a deep something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and thank you for
Yeah.
pointing that out, because I think that's, you know, he's probably the first person I think of every time I am at a walk.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, LA, you know, part of my experience and understanding of Los Angeles, you know, is along during the summertime, because we start in like July and go into August every weekend in LA County alone. Every weekend,
Yeah.
there
Someone's
is
got a Obon going
at
on.
least
Yeah.
one or two or three happening. Right. Pasadena, Venice, you know what I mean? So yeah, I always think about him, and it's like this. And then my dad also died during the summer, August 16th. So the summer to me is like it is like this elegy. It's like, yeah, it is a reminder of transition. Lots of remembering and paying homage and yeah, transition for sure. So yeah. Thank you for having me read that. Yeah.
So many powerful pieces in here. It's really hard to decide which ones to, you know, select. There's also another one. I was really curious about your dedication page.
In acknowledgements or at the beginning?
Yeah. Can you read that one too?
Sure. Dedicated to the continuum. All the bridge builders, fire starters, subtle markers, direct talkers, humble sages, teachers, nurses, healers, counselors, therapists, misfit and alien beings, big sisters, siblings, cousins, mentors, the ghosts, the bones, and impossible survivors who raise and raise me. We are here. I want to stay alive because of you. For Ma, for the Argentine.
You got a big crew.
Which includes you.
Oh, a second. Well, you know, I actually identified fire starter.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that, you know, all the people I'm building with, like I feel like, you know what I mean? The only, like, literally non-metaphorical is the literal one about teachers, nurses, healers. I was like, I need to just say it, because teachers and nurses are like, just my heroes.
Yeah.
So my parents are teachers, and, you know, counseling and therapists, you know, that's been a big part of my adulthood. So, you know, yeah.
So,
But why did you, what?
because at the end here, you say, I, Corinne, want to stay alive because of you.
Want to is in parentheses.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
is there an implication here that if it wasn't for them, you would consider not being here?
Woo!
I mean, because I thought, did you have suicidal thoughts? I mean, what?
You are a direct talker.
That's the first kid that
I so appreciate that.
They were thinking of maybe not hanging out here, huh?
You know, that's a super complicated one, right?
Yeah.
And you know, again, my rule was like, it has to be what I actually feel if I'm gonna write this down, much less have it be printed.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I wrote that, I was like, I stay alive because of you. But want to kept coming up as the most real, the most honest. I don't think I address it directly in here. Maybe I allude to it. You know, I think that I had, as an early kid, these weird fantasies attached to it. It might have been partially because, I think there is a piece where I do kind of talk about one particular memory of somebody who was right before me, and then suddenly they were not due to suicide. And from that moment, I had this fascination and like an understanding that I don't want to, it's tricky to say this. At the time I thought that it was like, it's okay. And what I mean by that, it's understandable. It's understandable as a form of dealing. And then I think later, much later, dealing with one of the closest people in my life ever, which I point to a little bit in this book, you know, dealing with her particular orientation to that ideation, and finding out more about her history and her attempt. Like, it's just always on my mind, you know what I mean? And then I think getting in this car accident when I was 16, which is one of the death moments I talk about, which is, I think, the first time that I was like, well, that's a death moment. It wasn't near death experience. I literally said the word okay. And it was like silent. But as soon as I said okay, boom, all the noise came, the jaws of life were there, all this stuff. And then I was in the hospital for almost a month, which is a long time to think. You know what I mean? It's a long, long time to be in the hospital. So, what am I saying? Getting lost in all these threads. But I think at that moment, it was like, really, I was literally forced to wake up. Like, I don't care what has been going on in your life, these previous years of your short life, whatever comes next, you better just do it.
Isn't that 16?
Yeah. I was like, whatever comes up and you need or want to do it, you do it. Stop messing around, stop effing around with this other stuff that you're occupying your mind with. And move, do something. And so that's how I check in with that 16-year-old a lot, you know? And then getting cancer, I think it was just like, there's always this thing, like, no, I want to stay alive. I want to stay alive. I got to stay alive. I want to stay alive. And I stay alive literally because of people. Yeah. I love my city. I love where I come from, LA, because I want to loop back around to that. And why I said San Francisco. But, LA for me is like one of those things where it's because of the people. Certainly not the infrastructure or the powers that be or the architecture. So, you know what I mean? I appreciate that. That's a hard one. Yeah. It's a really important one to talk about, you know?
Yeah, because there's this other piece that you wrote about, and I wanted to juxtapose because it was about on the brink of, being in fear and dying, and then I was thinking, well, we had moments of thoughts of, suicidal ideation, wanting to leave, and then having a, diagnosis, and now this accident as a 16-year-old, how that would have changed your perception of sticking around.
Yeah.
But you pretty much answered my follow-up question through your 16-year-old self, which is like, oh no, hell, I am definitely sticking around.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to have this crew helps reinforce, I'm definitely sticking around.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's like, Kathy Masaoka might still be on this call. One of I call her my Sansei BFF. Like all my mentors, like the people who raised me, like the village who raised me as an adult, like, like the community, it's just like, that's the why. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can I say the thing about San Francisco?
Yeah.
Okay, I love y'all Bay Area people. I do. I really do. Oh boy. I got to.
Go ahead.
It's okay, baby. It's okay, baby. Oh, okay, I know. No, Elton sees another doggy. That's what's
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. No, it's okay, baby. We're having a thing here, folks. Oh, covering our bodies. That's a good tactic. Yeah. It's okay. Elton, it's okay, baby. Yeah, it's okay. Good. Elton, no. Okay. That's awesome that happened right when I started talk about the Bay Area. Okay, so the reason why in the section about LA, I wanted to write about my feeling like LA is a Scorpio, because when I travel, I always get into these debates and sometimes full-on arguments about Los Angeles.
Oh, yes.
And then sometimes, a half an hour into the conversation, I'm talking to people who've never been to Los Angeles. Okay? And I get it. If you're watching LA Story and Crash, terrible depictions. Okay? Crash won the Academy Award, like it was a popular film. I'm like, it's so not LA. And but the most vitriolic debates I've had in the past about LA have been with San Francisco people. If I'm to be honest, because I don't know, it's like, I don't know if it's so much a thing now, but you know,
It definitely was like a phenomenon.
yeah.
Yeah, they just want to trash. And I get it, but yeah, a lot of them are just speaking crap because
Yeah.
they don't even actually know.
Yeah.
And like in your poem, they're only talking about this 15-minute experience they had at Santa Monica,
Yeah.
or or they went to Disneyland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get it.
Yeah.
They just wanted to talk shit.
Should we do a time check real quick?
Oh, yeah.
How are we doing?
How much time do we have?
So it's almost time to eat.
Almost
Oh
time
my
to
god.
eat.
Okay. Oh man. Oh my god. Okay. So wait.
You've got some great messages.
Oh, okay. Can we save them sometime?
Yeah, I'm gonna save them.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there was let me speed this up. Whoa, okay, let me leave it to another thing that came up was like, okay, I feel like this is also like a guidebook, a manual on how to be fierce, right? Yeah.
I'm gonna quote you and put you on a graphic for that.
Okay. Yeah, I better do next time. If you ask me what I said, like, I don't know what I said. So like, there's that poem on getting the biopsy. Yeah. And let's see what page is that. Let's see, I have it marked here somewhere. Shit. I have it right here. Okay, right here, page 36. If you can read that, it's kind of long. It's kind of long. Okay.
Do you want me to just talk about it, or what?
Okay.
Maybe you can ask me a question to encourage people to buy the book.
Yeah.
So, Green Door Store, Bookshop, Barnes & Noble, and of course Amazon.
Yeah, so this is like a good manual, a good guide on how to show up, in your truth. So I'll just sum it up and then you can add to it.
Okay.
But so this is the moment where you're going for your biopsy, and
Yes.
there's an awkward moment where you're on the table and face down, and the nurse is holding your hand, right, from underneath.
Well, she's holding my breast.
Yeah,
My
right.
hand, yeah.
Right, yeah, and so you're facing down, and you take this calculated risk where you're trying to make small talk, and you know you have 45 minutes, and then you got to decide, okay, are we just gonna do small talk, or are we gonna be real here, And maybe you can read a couple passages about how that conversation unfolds.
Sure.
Oh,
Okay,
start from here.
sure. Okay, so the nurse will pat my back at its center and ask me what I do for a living. This is always the tricky part between strangers. Keep it light or keep it real. Tell her everything, cut to the chase. What do I have to lose? We will be here for 40 minutes. She will have my left breast in her right hand for most of it. Enough time for honesty and judgment without the sting of attachment. If what I say centers around her discomfort, then she will still have my left breast in a vice and we will be even. I tell her everything. I cut to the chase. I have nothing to lose. I speak in lean terms. I center on my truths. Me as queer. Me with mind split between yesterday's shooting and tonight's vigil. This is the day after Orlando, okay? The shooting in Orlando, this nightclub. Me in vigilance for the dead as much as those left running for cover in the days, weeks, and years of backlash. The shooter was Muslim. Me in love and solidarity with my family of queer folk, Muslim community, our immigrant families, and the list continues. My politics are not shy. My words attempt to carve an avenue on this cold biopsy table. She looks me in the eye, she listens and nods. A map emerges between us. She says she wishes she could join me. There is work and life and no time, and she tells me, you go to this vigil for me too. I wish I could nod back, but I can't move from the center. Instead, I moan. She understands that language much better than I do. She speaks in possibility and kindness and grabs my hand. Within minutes, I chart her origins. We locate an old dream of her, once a painter. Within minutes, she navigates my politics and my relations. She nods as I moan and squeeze her fingers. My half-numb breast is stuck in a vise with a needle at its center, and all is good, and I'm fine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
But see how amazing, because in that moment, you know, when you decide to like speak your truth, you open up that entire, like, you know, that universe, that bridge to be like, you get to see her humanity. And the last thing you're going to expect her to say is like, oh, will you be there for me too?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For this community, you
Yeah.
know? It's like, you can't assume, you know?
No.
So don't decide for other people how it's going to go down.
Right.
You know, just be in your truth and
Yeah.
just know that you're going to get something so much more.
Yeah.
So like, flow like that, be like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, you know, get the book. Be readers.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how, just make it till you make it. You know.
Thank you so
There's just so much more. I feel like we could do part 2, part 3, part 4, but hey, but you know, this is
we'll
the
just talk about
beginning.
death the whole time.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Come on, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
I think we're gonna go have some chef. What is the chef's name? Chef
Yuji
Ishikata.
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 He's
So
gonna
we're
have some
treats.
sandals and salada,
So awesome.
otherwise known as sandwiches of salad.
Yeah. So let's say hi to everybody.
Yeah, so who's all over
Can
there?
we take a photo with
Yeah.
the you know, the crowd out
Yeah,
there?
like who's here? Everybody. We don't see any faces at all.
Oh, good. Some people are turning on their.
Okay, turn
Yay.
on your videos, people, because we want to see you. Who's there?
Even just for a second. Oh my gosh, Jan!
Who's in the house?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, some more Omusubi crew.
Narinda! What up? Thank you, folks. Oh, wait, Narinda. Oh, who's all here? Yeah. Cool. Thank you, everybody. This is really special. Hey, what up, Carl? I just met Carl.
Yeah.
Ah, what's up, man? Thank you. Awesome. Okay, cool.
Wow. Thanks.
Good day, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Let us know what you think of the book.